everybody. So, a while back, I threatened Mike over at Keith and Mike watch Star Trek Deep Space Nine and look at my Star Trek toys and the other shows. I threatened Mike that I was going to do a video throwing us back to the early days of YouTube, where I review everything that they've been doing on their show on Keith and Mike watch Deep Space Nine, and I've just been watching that 90s show, and I was just like, this is the right time to do this. So let's get started. Emissary, the very first episode 1, part 1. Keith missed out on a piece of one of my favorite pieces of trivia. There are actually 2 actors on Deep Space Nine that are featured on Deep Space Nine playing aliens that had originated similar aliens years earlier. There was Armin Shimmerman, who was the first Ferengi in the Next Generation episode way back in the first season, and Mark Alimo was Gul Macet, the first Cardassian in the Next Generation, before going on to play Gul Dukat on Deep Space Nine. As far as the acting, all the Trek actors have discussed that it can be difficult early on to find the characterizations, and I think that's what they were feeling about the acting. It gets dramatically better as the show goes on. Episode 2, Emissary Part 2. All I really had to say was that the predictions for that he made for the next episode, things, good times for all. That was it. Then next episode, they were talking about past prologue. That's when I recommended that they start rating the show in self-sealing stem bolts. I think that they missed that he wanted to shoot the bomb into the wormhole as it was opening on flyby, but Kira flew them into it instead, and I think Garak picked Bashir because he knew things about the Doctor that we don't learn about until later on. And I would have loved a Garak spinoff. Sorry, the dogs are all hanging out with me, and when one of them moves, they all get upset. Okay, they've stopped moving. Next episode, A Man Alone. I do love that this episode starts as a straightforward whodunit with the sheriff as the suspect. Also, that Mike thinks this is a horny episode, because that comes much later on. I said it's great how you are seeing Dax the same way those of us who are LGBT saw Dax 30 years ago, even though the showrunner has regretted not doing more LGBT things in the show. More often by accident, the show was wonderfully if not covertly, encouraging to us. Jessie Gender has talked about her love for Dax many times on her channel, but if you pay attention in the future, they refer to the Dax symbiote, the worm, typically by they or them, while Jadzia actually gets the she, her pronouns. And have seen the Bajoran unrest subplot was a setup for future episodes. Obviously, Rom uses a phase cleaner to hose down the holosuite after each person. These early episodes have a bit of a problem that they do a quick tidy up ending that happens a little too fast in the final act, but it was another good episode. I didn't really have any comments about Babel, but then Captive Pursuit said, Keith, if you breed yourself over and over, no one will want to look at you. Mike, don't worry, the show will address disability access. The painting that Odo hides as is actually a painting of the Bajoran fire caves that we don't actually see until season 7. What's a little disappointing, spoiler for Mike, the writers intended to bring back the Hunters as part of the Dominion, but never got around to it. Keith, I'm going to come take your clicky pen away. Devo is an American rock band formed in 1973, known for wearing plant pots on their head. Whatever that bumper was, it ain't canon yet because it didn't happen. You'll have some audio issues, and I didn't catch it the first couple of times. And he didn't do it. So if you're familiar with Doctor Who, the fan favorite line is "It's bigger on the inside," and for Deep Space Nine, it's "What's a self-sealing stem bolt?" Next episode, Q-less. Have you two realized that when y'all start talking about sex, you both sound like a pair of sopranos racing for the high note? Remember, the Daystrom Institute goes back to the character of Richard Daystrom from the original series. He was basically the Henry Ford of the original series, and the Institute would be equivalent to the Modern Research Institute for Engineering and Science, or MIT. And Keith, one thing to keep in mind is that all of Season 1 is when Berman still had a heavy thumb on the show, hence so many Next Generation references all season, plus some of the minor issues, and you never queued up the joke. So the next episode was Dax. Said, so if you're not a patron, you better watch the ads, damn it. So this episode was on Valentine's. It's an episode about a woman cheating on her husband. Nice. And in all honesty, I did shed a tear when Dorothy Fontana died. So they are eating at the Replimat, and if you look up the promenade's layout, you'll see that there's a storage room directly across from the Replimat. The little used overrider. By the way, the beta canon is in the beta canon. It's stated that Deep Space Nine has like 800 guest quarters, about 40 staterooms, and no, Mike, that was a bad Columbo joke. Thank you, Mike. The fact that Keith never acknowledges that fingering Dax moment was hilarious. One of the things about the Trill is that the symbiote is more of a passive member, while the host is the active member. And while Star Trek has always strived to be morally progressive, as time passes, we can see that 30, 40, 50 years on, our ideas of moral progress isn't quite what we thought it would be back then. Sometimes we have actually progressed more than we imagined back then. And sometimes we've not yet met that place, and sometimes we come to an idea that isn't what real progress is. Now that we've learned more since then, by the way, I have mentioned I'm also a philosopher and have written a book. And Keith, yeah, there's so much I want to say about Dax, but it's hard because I don't want to spoil season 6 or 7 for Mike. But yeah, Mike, it's worth waiting on that story thread. But yeah, we do actually get a good round bit of storytelling about even Curzon, even though he died before the show technically started. And yeah, the only real down for me this episode is the fact that the legal question doesn't get answered. Which the little lawyer in me is like, come on. When compared to Measure of a Man, which actually answered the question, I imagine Rontagino is like Death Wish coffee. And Keith, I have to give you internet points for most seditious earworm, because the other day I was in the shower singing Alamarimi. So screw you, good job. And how you didn't make intercuts of Anne Haney doing lines from Liar Liar and Miss Doubtfire. You are better than me. No one delivers a question as good as she does. Mr. Hiller, do you consider yourself humorous? And are you saying you are incapable of lying? Yeah, classics. And yeah, for me, this is a solid 90 for me. It's a great episode. Also, to add on to your comment about it not being about sex, the episode also never talked down to its audience, which with something like this can be difficult to write. Another great one. Gotta write that stem bolt song. Good luck. We're all counting on you. And the self-sealing stem bolts. Keith, there are multiple bathrooms seen throughout all the shows. Everyone just ignores them. While this isn't a strong episode, it's still a pretty good one to me. And to further your point, this story could have been thrown on Babylon 5 and been about the same. And hey, Move Along Home might not be too great. It's still not as bad as Shades of Grey. Next episode, Move Along Home. So at 5 minutes 54 seconds, did Mike have a stroke? And yeah, Mike, I do the same thing when the theme song starts up. Did you murder the word obfuscates? And the stakes aren't important. It's a lighthearted romp, and I suspect that the Wadi are a species based on gaming. So it's not the end results, it's the fun getting there. If Bashir had been laying on the floor, it might have been a little better when he woke up. I could listen to Mike do interpretive Kira for an hour. And I've suspected that much of the cast kind of planned in this episode, or kind of phoned in this episode after reading the script. Ending with, "That's our Quark." Please don't ever do that Nagus laugh while I'm wearing headphones again. And yeah, you're right. This episode could have been much better, but it failed in execution. Next episode, The Nagus. I never realized that Zach was a pedophile until I heard Mike do the laugh. The signal is looking really nice and clear. Congrats. Okay, this time I actually paused your video to go watch Informer. I had never heard it. I've never heard it before. 12-year-old me would have thought that song was weird. 40-year-old me is confounded as well. The top comment on the song Informer is, "This is the final boss for people who are learning English." And that's hilarious. Because, yeah, he's worried about someone informing others about his leaky boom boom? I don't know. And I don't care. Back to the Nagus. Dude, I love The Rocketeer and never put that together. Nice one. The scene where Ben finds Jake teaching Nog to read always makes my eyes water. Because, yeah, like Mike, thanks for sharing that story. I had a similar situation with my dad, so I get it. There are so many people that have taught me so many things, from my grandmother teaching me to tie my shoes, to Mike teaching me the disturbingness of the Nagus' laugh. And you two can't have an episode without a tech burp. Reminds me of my opening night curse. If you do a Ferengi figures parade, you should reach out to my buddy Joshua. He's made like 60 custom Ferengi figures. You'd really enjoy them. I've only made like 4 or 5 custom Ferengi. As much personal life dealing stuff as this episode brought out for Mike, I'm worried that if by season 6 Mike's gonna be just like using the hour to air his laundry. I feel you, man. I appreciate it, but prepare for some titty deep shit to get through. Next episode, Vortex. Don't really have anything to say. Next episode's Battle Lions. Gremlins 2 also had a bunch of Trek connections. Hopefully Mike will later this year. Hopefully Mike will enjoy later this year. I'll be adding a Trek book club to my channel and showing a bunch of Deep Space Nine books. By the way, tricorders can be used to communicate with the central computer, so possibly O'Brien and Dax are just monitoring updates from the computer. This episode is actually one of my favorites from season 1. It reminds me a lot of the original series episode, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, which should for sure be on Mike's watch list. In that, it's two groups of people that have gotten so addicted to hating each other that they are stuck in a loop of death. I wish it was possible to have Rue McClanahan be in Sister Act, with nothing said about her being an old white lady. Mike's like, we getting lesbian Umox on here? Nice. I've always equated the ear hold to being equivalent of the way an evangelical preacher will ask to hold your hand as though they are feeling spirits of energy as a transference of a blessing in a way. Or go watch videos of the Catholic Pope greeting a crowd and how he'll touch people's faces and hands. I suspect it's like that. One of the big things to me is, if they've been in this literal living hell for hundreds of years, death would be a relief, I would think. And in a way, although a completely separate moral debate from this episode, is giving a person the dignity and right to die when and how they want. But again, these two groups couldn't stop fighting long enough to consider ending their own pain. Mike will learn O'Brien must suffer. Anywho, to spoil this for Mike, the thing about this episode that actually annoys me is that they never followed it up. It's an obvious chapter to the story on Opaka, but they never follow it up. Sorry, Mike, better to know now. It's a signal that does whatever Dom Space tells it to do with Umox. The distance Mike goes to for puns is Forrest Gump level of a jog. Obviously, Keith was referencing the Punjabi musician Dr. Zeus. Mike didn't know about that real music. Mike's been missing out on some real bangras. Next episode was The Storyteller. Keith needs a 2009 movie phaser with a built-in fidget pew-pew. That Freak Me cover is scary. And yeah, there's nothing controversial about Kipling. Keith was reading the Trek Wiki, which in 1993, the DiMaggio streak was the longest at that point. It really is the start of a fantastic relationship between two very different people, which is fun. Although the Cardassians diverted the river and the one tribe took advantage of it when the occupation ended, you just really wanted to say dickhead. Jeez. Mike is going to love an upcoming episode with baseball. Keep in mind, World War III kind of ended a lot of things in the Trek universe, which started around the 2030s, I think, and lasted like 30 years. And yeah, the occupation was like 50 years. So the Cardassians never went to this one town and started asking questions. It was a valid bit, because despite it feeling an interesting story, it has a lot of problems. Miss Mike needs to help Mike calm down. Yes, Old Man Shouts at Sky. I wonder if Trek actually did this before Simpsons. I think we don't learn about Nog's mother till season 5. I'm calling Mike's mom and telling on him. Look, seriously, they probably just shouldn't have tried to write a sci-fi based on a Kipling adventure story. It really doesn't deserve this level of overthought. Kipling was an imperialist super racist that doesn't really translate. This episode should have been labeled Keith and Mike Yell at a Cloud. Governance based on a height. It's our way. Short people have no rights. I think that this is an episode of missed opportunities. Both of your cleanups would have worked, but it's easy to say that looking back at it. If you switch the A plot to Dr. Crusher and Data on the planet, and Picard and Troy in the B plot with Wesley in place of Jake and Nog, it starts to work in a way. Don't you love it when you ask your body, hey, can we do X? And your body just laughs in your face. The Bajorans are dealing with famine and power shortages and sky monsters. Gotta work on that stuff. It is funny how close this story could be compared to modern fracking. Well, one of the other things great about this episode is Sisko has to be the good antagonist, and it's great. Something that's odd to consider is how often Trek did relocate a group of people story, to the point that one is even a movie. Mike, remember the stun settings have levels, so if it was a higher level, it might have been a pretty good sting. By the way, it's a no-J consortium. Mike, the external set used for Malabak's house is an outdoor set that, well, used a few times in Trek. I think it's the first time we've seen it in Deep Space Nine since the pilot. I would need to double check that, but I think so. I think it was the same park used for the inside of the wormhole in the pilot and several outside locations coming up. And Mike learns why you don't make wishes. Mike, scream fixin' to Dixon. Next episode, If Wishes Were Horses. I'm digging Mike's Pike Peak hair. Awesome. So obviously y'all don't know about the Disney World sex clubs. Considering Rumpelstiltskin was written in 1812, I would say it's out of copyright. And yeah, I enjoy the Underworld movies as well. Which Kevin Grievo there was also a co-writer on the movie, not just the character of Reyes. Wouldn't it be Hide the Phaser, not the tricorder? To be honest, I think you're overthinking the plot of the alien's intent. I think the message that's easily lost in the full version of the title, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride, meaning you can't just get what you want by wishing for it. You have to work for it. There's no point in just wishing for things to be true. Next episode, The Forsaken. Damn, watch out, Keith. Shots fired. What's interesting about Kira's jumpsuit is that was how the figure was sculpted, not the jacket and pants. Mike, you've seen me complain about Shades of Grey before. I hate it so much. To be honest, DS9 writers handled Lwaxana a dozen times better than the Next Generation did early on. A few years ago, we actually learned that the studio, Lucille Ball being behind it, didn't actually have a problem with a woman first officer. What they had a problem with was that the then married Gene Roddenberry hiring his side chick to be the second lead of the show. Gene then lied about it for years. She does love doing it in the teaser. The station runs on Linus. We just pretending Ambass is a word now. Yeah, the turbo lifts have a force field. The one thing about that C-plot is that the station's chief doctor has nothing better to do than babysit some ambassadors. Another great week. Have fun, Mike. See you when you get back. So, Dramatis Persona. I feel like Mike's not here for Keith's bullshit today. 12 discs of Buble bonus material sounds like way too much. And after that song performance, nobody has time for that. Join us as Keith struggles to read his notes. Yeah, you're not awake, we can tell, and yeah, I love that clock. I really want one for myself. We really do watch this for the personal confessions of Keith and Mike. I keep wondering if one day you two will be like, yes, this episode reminds me of the time that we killed a hobo and threw the body in the river. But Kira was cool here. We're going to be getting K&M Let's Play. So, it's the Ring for Trek. I kind of want to see that now. Quark works with Gloria Allred. Gonna sue the Starfleet? and more weird confessions. Gotta love you did a shout out to Ben Vereen, who played Geordi's dad on Next Generation. This whole thing makes you realize that psychic time capsule would be a really dumb idea. Holy crap, y'all are breaking down the TNG episode Mask. It's forced community theater in a capsule. This episode is a weird one. I'm okay that it doesn't make sense, but it's okay it doesn't. Because it's a fun and weird, and you can't question that logic. Next episode, Duet. Let's see, it's been 3 weeks and neither of you have given That's the Way Love Has Gotta Listen? One thing this episode always reminds me of is the interactions between Clarice and Hannibal in Silence of the Lambs. That table is part of the Replimat on the promenade. Keith getting on his soapbox there at the end, but you're 100% right. Confronting your past is vital for a person and a group. I love the Kinks. And then finally, In the Hands of the Prophets. So wondering if Mike even realizes he's just sitting there for the first 30 seconds or so being awkward. I've been waiting to see Mike's reaction to this one because Louise Fletcher is so amazing. Horrible in this character as she often is, if you haven't seen Flowers in the Attic, she plays possibly the most horrible person ever. Keith, you forget that Italy is in Europe? I think Kira's view in this episode makes sense in the larger story of the show. She's a true believer who constantly struggles with her secular side, and it's valuable. Damn it. Now if Beto becomes my governor, I'm going to always think about Vedic Beto. The fact that the phasers misses everyone is ridiculous, because you see it shoot wildly into the crowd and miss everyone. And this is where things start to get fun. I'll see you next time. If you enjoy my content, please leave a comment, check out my other videos, and consider giving a like, subscribing, ringing the bell, supporting me on Patreon, and checking out my Etsy, all in the down below. If you don't like my content, then I'm wondering why you've made it this far. Should I sing you a verse of Camptown Ladies? Camptown ladies, sing this song, doo-dah, doo-dah. Camptown ladies, 5 miles long, oh, doo-dah day. Gonna run all night, gonna run all day.